Hey everybody, it is Mrs. Clemens, and we are working on Vocabulary 11 to help us to review for vocab quiz, and we're talking about industrialization. All right, let's get started. So what I did, guys, is I divided our 15 words up into three groups of 5, and so this first group has to do with capitalism. So our first thing here is laissez-faire. Now, here's what you guys need to know. You know how we talk about how there are some words that are interchangeable? Laissez-faire is one of them, just generally for our purposes in here and for the regions. So laissez-faire basically means the same thing as capitalism and the free market, free enterprise. Basically, the general idea that the government should not get involved in the economy. We have a laissez-faire general capitalist economy. Does our government get involved? Yeah. Obviously it does. In the fact that you can't work. We have a minimum wage. We have a minimum work age. We have Obamacare. We have Social Security. We have food stamps. We have welfare, Medicare, Medicaid. So do we have a pure laissez-faire? Oh my gosh, definitely not. But we have pretty much as close to how it comes in the world. The dude that is known as the father of capitalism is Adam Smith. Hunky guy. All right, Adam Smith, capitalism. Sorry, I got interrupted, so I may have just said that same exact thing other than him being hunky. All right, corporation. Corporation is a company where it's not just one person, like a sole proprietorship where one person owns the company, the business. This is where multiple people own it, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. So for example, my Nana, I love you, Nana, when she passed away, she left me stock in Central Hudson. So I am, of course, now Central Hudson has been sold. But anyway, regardless, so I'm part owner of Central Hudson, which is kind of cool. Although now it's been sold, so now I'm not an owner anymore. But good times had by all. And you guys know corporations. You see them all over the place. Pepsi, AT&T, McDonald's, John Deere, Taco Bell, Volkswagen, we see them all the time, Microsoft. These are all corporations. And there's a whole bunch of reasons to have that. Main thing is that you get a lot more investors so that you can spend a lot more money. So maybe you can have a monopoly. And a monopoly is when one company has complete control over a particular field of business. Now, again, we're being very simplistic. There are actually different types of monopolies. For us, we're just going to say you have total control. And then assembly line, well, if you're going to make all this money, you want to make a lot of money and you want to be able to make it the most efficient way possible. And one of the big things that people did was had assembly lines. That way you don't need to have skilled workers. All you have is one person that does one thing all day long. They don't do anything else. So this is like Henry Ford's Model T factory. Maybe you have somebody that all day they put the tires on. That's it. They don't know anything about the engine. They don't know anything about the windshield wipers. All they know, put the tires on. Maybe you have a guy that all he's doing is screwing in the engine. That's it. He doesn't know how the engine works. He just knows how to screw it into the chassis. So it makes it so that things can be a lot cheaper in terms of your labor force, and it also helps with that whole idea of interchangeable parts, so replacement is easier too. All right, now we're talking about industrialists. We have robber barons, people who gain their riches at the expense of the poor. And we're going to be looking at a bunch of political cartoons. And, here you've got, sort of the regular folks that are all, bringing their money to these guys. And again, when we talk about political cartoons, you see how these guys are quite plump. Whenever we see that, it's talking about them being greedy. So we're going to kind of debate this a little bit. Are these guys robber barons? Or are they the people who built America and made it into the nation that it is today, made it strong, made it a major industrial power, eventually made it a major just global power? The first guy here is Andrew Carnegie, and so he's an industrialist, but he's also what's called a philanthropist. It means that he gives to charity, and we're not just talking about like how before Christmas he puts like a quarter or something in the Salvation Army's thing. We're talking he gave away millions of dollars. He gave away most of his fortune when he died. So his company is Carnegie Steel, and he defends something called social Darwinism. And the idea there is that survival of the fittest economically and socially. Our next guy is John D. Rockefeller, and you end up with a whole bunch of Rockefellers as time kind of even goes on. So he's not the guy behind Rockefeller Center. That's actually a later Rockefeller, same family, but different guy. So he's an industrialist and a philanthropist, also gave a lot of money away. And he's the founder of Standard Oil Company, which is huge. Becomes basically, if you can think of a brand of gas, that was originally part of Standard Oil. Then you have J.P. Morgan, and he kind of bests the other guys. He's a banker. He actually bails out the United States government twice. He's also a huge philanthropist, art collector, so there's museums that are based just from all the stuff that he kind of gathered. He started a steel company and obviously banking. You guys have heard of Chase Morgan. Merged it when Carnegie sold out and formed what the company called U.S. Steel. And so here we've got Rockefeller, you've got Carnegie, you've got Morgan. We've got here Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt is an early robber baron. We don't have him on this vocab, but obviously we have Vanderbilt Mansion nearby us, and he was into railroads. And then our last guy, and I don't know if he's necessarily considered to be a robber baron. A lot of people do consider him to be. But Henry Ford, who headed, obviously the Ford Motor Company. Did he invent the automobile? No. Holy cow, no. That was Mercedes. But did he even invent the assembly line? No. He just really innovated with it and made, tons and tons of money with his cars, and that's Henry Ford. All right, some reforms that are passed or tried to get done. One of the organizations that's created is the Grange, and they're trying to help out the farmers because they're really being taken advantage of. The railroads are charging them all kinds of crazy prices, and it's just not cool. Thanks, railroads. And so here's one of their posters, and it kind of has these different vignettes here. Another thing that starts happening is unions are formed, and we have this thing called collective bargaining. This is when instead of you individually going to negotiate with your employer, you have a union and they negotiate on your behalf. So with us, there's a teachers union, and I am actually, if you can believe it, I am part of the negotiating team. And so we have about 270 teachers. There's 5 of us who are on the negotiations team, and we negotiate for those other 270 teachers, for things like health insurance and pay and sick days and all those things. And that's collective. It's together. It's a group of people. The Sherman Antitrust Act, they realized that monopolies are all over the place. You see antitrust. So a trust is another word for monopoly, anti is against. And so their goal is to prevent monopolies, but it didn't work very well, it was not enforced. And so, here we've got the law, Bill, I'm just a Bill on Capitol Hill. I like that he's stepping out of the coffin, and he's going and punching people, trying to get rid of those monopolists. Minimum wage, this is something we still have today. This is the legal lowest amount that you can be paid. And there's a national minimum wage, and then states can set their own minimum wages. So New York's minimum wage is higher than other states' minimum wages. And then we have the Interstate Commerce Commission, and this is the first independent government agency, the ICC, which was specifically created to regulate the railway to help those farmers out. Again, it wasn't super effective because things weren't enforced. Later on, it does get better. All right, folks, enjoy.